I think it's working. You're live. Look at that.
I'm live.
So, welcome to the Radiologic Technologist blog, YouTube channel, Instagram, Smoke Signals, and Carrier Pigeon. My wife was kind enough to join me for a video. She is an x ray tech, has been for 12 years now. We both went to Pima Medical Institute back in Mesa, Arizona. But she was working with a student today, and the student asked her a question, and it was a good question, and it led to a discussion, and her and I were discussing it, and it led to more discussion, and I thought there's plenty of techs and students in the Facebook group that would benefit from this because we have two different perspectives. We have the tech perspective and the administrative perspective, and of course, I was a tech first, but the situation started with at her clinic where she does x-rays. They do their L spines standing, and I always did them supine. And so I know, I remember doing them supine. When you do your spot, you would angle to get the L5S1. And I don't remember ever even doing a standing L spine, to be honest.
It's,
um,
it's. I mean, since I've worked for the company I worked for, I've been there for 6 years. When I started, we did them all laying down, but then they changed and said they want them all standing weight bearing.
so she continued to angle the tube for the L5S1, because why wouldn't you? If you do it laying down, why wouldn't you do it standing up? Nothing really changes.
Well, I mean, I think it changes a little bit because you're not having that weight of your body and changing the way your hip is and stuff. So I mean, I kind of understand that, but I think my thought process was more of the idea that I do my lateral and it's not angled, and you have L5S1 on there. So when I go to do the spot, I felt like I was just repeating the same thing. So I kind of felt like I wanted to give them something different. Not that that's the right idea, but I'm also thinking of Laura, like, why would I be taking that image twice? I know that we've been told, you can't take your L spine, and if the spot looks open, take that and just clip
Crop it
it
out
and then make that the
digitally.
L5. Or I
Yeah.
mean, make that the
You've been
S1,
told
because
that's okay?
no, that is not
Oh,
okay. That's considered
yeah.
fraud, because now you're charging to read 3 images when in all reality you only took two. So I was thinking along the lines of kind of like that,
Billing
like,
fraud.
why would I take a repeated image that was already there? So my student was asking, she's like, nobody else, because I work for a big company that has several facilities, and these students travel to the different facilities, and she was at mine today, and she's like, none of the other techs at the main do an angle. And so I was like, I kind of gave her my thought process, and looking it up in the book says, if there's no curvature, then, you don't need an angle.
Why
So,
wouldn't there be a curvature though? There's always a
well, because you
curvature.
don't have the weight of the body. So there's not as much of a curvature as when you're laying on your side. So it's
I
like,
guess
especially
so.
big hipped women, you're going to angle more
Yeah.
because they're like that way. And so I decided that I would bring up to my manager, like, why don't we change it to something kind of like we do with just a 2 or 3 view C spine, right? So we can do a 2 view if you can see C7. If not, then they want to add the swimmers, and that's kind of up to the discretion of the tech. So why would we not maybe do the same thing with our L spine, do an AP, a lateral? If the spot is open, then there's no need to do that third image and add the spot. I don't know if that'll fly or what, but I think of, patients. I think of Alara. I think of best patient care,
That's practice.
best practice. Why are we
So the first question I was going
doing
to put
that?
out to you guys was, do you do angled views for a spot on a standing, or do you not? We had the discussion where, what's the difference between your lateral L spine standing and moving down and just shooting again for an L5S1 with no angle? And I said, well, there is a little bit of a difference, because your central array changes its location. And anytime you change the central array, you put more of a focus and get a better image where that central array is. So if you move it down to the L5S1 joint and your central ray is right there, you're going to get a better image of that joint space than you would have on the lateral. But then she pointed out accurately, but with digital imaging equipment these days, is there really that big of a difference because of post processing and everything that our equipment does? So I think that's another great question: is does it really make a difference? But
I mean, because basically it's, you know, it's diagnostic. You know, I could understand that maybe if there was a patient that had a fracture there, or, you know, they wanted to see that better or more, you know, then maybe that patient, right, we come back and we do a spot, we add that in. But when it's somebody that walks in and is like 90% of our patients, you know, chronic lower back pain, no injury, you know, pain going down the one leg. Basically, I'm here to get this x-ray so that hopefully I can go get an MRI and see if there's any nerve damage.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the other good point is when we first started going digital, and we learned that you could take the L spine lateral and crop it down and pull the L5S1 out of that and create it as a second image or third image. We were like, hey, we don't have to expose the patient anymore. We can take the same image and recreate it and angle it or whatever, and even window it a little bit, make it look a little better. And we did a good thing, but down the road, what that turned into his insurance company saying, you're billing us as if you did the work of 3 exams and you only did 2, and you modified 1 to get the third. So you can't bill us for that third image because you didn't actually acquire it. It's the same image as the second one. You just modified it, which is kind of screwy, really. But the insurance companies get to dictate what we do a lot. So I don't know if any of you are still doing that practice of taking images from other images and completing.
I think that's fraud. I
exams.
Think we're not allowed to.
I think it depends on where you're working, but
I think it has more to do with insurance companies.
Well, it is. That's what I said. But what this led to was we'd had a discussion about what it takes to, and I did a live video I think yesterday about the RadTech 1, 2, and 3 position and what the difference is for anybody that's wondering how do I get to that next level? What qualifies me for more pay? What qualifies me to get to the next rung on the ladder of the career ladder? And so I mentioned to her, since she went to her manager and said, hey, look, here's a possible way that we can save dose to our patients if we were to convert a 3-view to a 2-view protocol wise. And I pointed out, you know, that's an example of a tech going above and beyond and being an engaged employee versus an employee that just does the bare minimum and you know, clock punchers and don't really care about the output, don't care about quality control. Because when it comes time to get your evaluation, your immediate managers and supervisors are usually on your side and they'll try to get you the best raise possible. But once you get above them, it's all about saving money and giving as little raise as possible. Like I had an administrator for 5 years that would say nobody, if you ranked an employee on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best, she would say nobody ever gets a 5. And I didn't understand that, but when she explained her thought process, it was that if you're a 5, that means there's no room for improvement, and everybody always has room for improvement, right? She would say. And I thought, well, yeah, but you can have people working at their maximum ability who can still learn more. Yes, but they're already giving everything. Those are the people that should get a 5. They should get the maximum raise. But you have most administrators out there don't agree with that. They're about how much money did I save? How much money can I tell my boss that I saved the company?
Well, but I think right now where the hardest thing is lying with a lot of us employees is, at least with the company I'm with, is there's no longer merit raises.
You just get cost of living?
A certain raise. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like that double-edged sword, you know what I mean? Like you being grateful for what you get, but then being like, you're only giving us this because people are leaving because we are so underpaid. So take it with a grain of salt. We've actually gotten like 2 or 3 raises within the past year. But
in the past year, yeah, which is unheard of.
But it's because if I go back and look, like they'll show me from the day I started, each time I got a raise, when I got it, how I got it, how much I got, and it gives me that on our site that we have.
Yeah.
And I can look and see that there was like 2 years where I got nothing. Zero.
And I just
And
talked
then
about
before
this.
that, it was like 15 cents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so now they've changed the pay scale. So the pay scales all went up because, you know, when I started there 6 years ago, the starting wages was $19. And they've changed it to almost 26 for a starting tech, which that's a lot. So for me in 6 years, you really think I've gotten that much of a raise, considering I didn't get a raise for a couple of years, and one time it was like 15 cents. So now the debate is, you know, am I getting paid what I'm worth when there's students coming in getting paid close to what I have?
Right.
Because I've been there for 6 years, and just kind of goes to show you, and it's kind of heart-wrenching for me because I'm a very, very loyal person, and I'll give you my all and I'll be loyal to you. And to find out that the students, because I am a CI now, I have taught students for a while, but I'm an actual CI this time, and students that I have taught are now making as much as I'm making, that just graduated less than a year ago, that we just was
That
our
you
most
trained.
recent hire, that I trained. You know, so
Yeah.
so I'm kind of in a struggle bus right there with that, and trying to, you know, I am very blessed to have a fantastic boss that listens to me and values my opinion and values my point of view, and truly does know that I am a good employee, and that I contribute to making her life easier by showing up to my job and taking care of my facility on my own with my partner. And
so let's dissect a lot of that, because you covered a lot of things.
Yeah.
One, and I think I talked about this yesterday, but you'll see over time the people that stay in the job for long periods of time will slowly get passed by the new hires that come in and start to make more, because every time they market adjust the range, they give the current employees a little bit to keep them within that range, but they hire new hires in a couple bucks ahead of that range. And before long, you've got somebody who's been there 10 or 15 years making almost or less than a new hire.
Well, and the kicker is, employees that got hired right before this pay raise, guess what?
We got another raise.
They got a pay raise.
Yeah.
So these new hires that got hired at this higher rate, because people won't come work for the lower wages that we were hired for nowadays, because fair, because inflation, because of everything. I am not saying that's a wrong thing, because I totally agree with it. But if they raised the base pay from $19 to almost, it's $25.87 is the starting wage for licensed, zero experience licensed tech. You do have to be licensed.
That's huge.
That's a huge. So why don't I get
that same
percentage jump? So say I started at $19. I'm not saying I did, but just say I started at $19, and they 19 to 26. That's $7.
Yeah.
Why did I not get a $7 raise? Because they felt that it was a $7 increase.
Right.
So why are we all not worth $7?
So here's the administrator. We did we're losing staff. We can't keep staff. We're hiring travelers.
Yes.
We're paying $80 an hour for travelers. We've got to stop the hemorrhaging. Let's do a market analysis and see what we should be paying our employees. The market analysis comes back. It says we're $7 an hour under the rest of the country. So they raised that range up. But if they did what you're saying, the whole department would jump $7 an hour. And there's no way they're going to be able to. I mean, they can. Let's get that straight. They can afford that, because they make millions of dollars.
We're like the number 2 moneymaker in the entire hospital.
Right. The OR always makes the most, and the OR borrows our techs to do their job.
And we don't get any of that cash flow.
We don't get paid for that.
Yeah.
So X-ray is the second highest earner in the hospital, and that's why when we need a new machine, we should get the new machine, but that's another story.
Well, and another kicker is that hey, new hire, not only are we going to pay you $7 more to start, but guess what? You get a sign-on bonus.
Victoria's being a smart aleck.
So not only are you going to be making almost as much money as I am, you just got a $2,000 sign-on bonus because you signed a contract saying you'd stay with 2 years, which, some people might not want to do that. And some people are like, well, 2 years, but dude, I've been there for 6. I would have gladly taken on a sign-on bonus.
So
or give me a sign-on bonus. Hey, if you stay for 2 more years, I'll give you a $2,000 sign-on.
Yeah.
A $2,000.
I just posted a
contract.
meme about that like a week ago about how they should be paying techs more instead of paying out bonuses and all that stuff.
I mean, yeah, why not? I mean, I don't
know. You
need
something? What?
I don't know what phone is. Well, is it in the back?
Teenager looking for a phone.
But anyway, so
yeah, we're on.
Just one of those things that I feel like I'm a completely engaged, valuable employee. They call me and say, hey, somebody called out, will you come work? Yeah. Luckily I'm in a stage where my kids are old enough that if I get called in, I can come in and I'm willing to. But I don't know. It's really hard to be loyal these days and to give it your all because you're just not getting that back. I don't know.
And that's across the healthcare system.
I think it's probably pretty much across any job, really.
It's across the healthcare system for sure. And then the really disheartening part is to look at the C-suite and how much they're making. They make more and more, gobs and gobs more every year.
And bonuses. They get get yearly bonuses. If they stay within their numbers, they get yearly bonuses.
Here's the thing that I want to point out before we forget is when this is what I told her, when it's time for you to get your annual evaluation, they're going to forget all these times that you came to them with an idea on how to make the department better. They're not going to remember that. So, and that's what I told her, you should send yourself an email with a subject line that you'll remember, like a suggestion that I made today, something like that, and write down what you suggested. And before your annual evaluation, go look up all your emails about your suggestions and print them out. And during the evaluation, when they ask you your opinion or however it goes down, you can say, here's the list of the 12 suggestions I made over the past year on how we could make this department better. And this is one of the reasons why that I feel I'm an engaged employee who deserves a decent raise. And you may even...
But the hard thing is, too, is they don't care about that anymore.
Well, you may even know, they may announce what the raises are going to be percentage-wise.
Yes.
So they may say, you're going to get, we're going to give up to a 3% raise. Mm-hmm. You need to do the math and say, what does a 1% raise look like? What's that dollar amount? What's a 2% raise? What's that dollar amount? And then what's that 3% raise? And be prepared to say, because in that interview, they should be telling you, here's your score on a scale of 1 to 5, you're a 4. Nobody's a 5 because everybody has room to improve. And at a 4, you get a 2% raise. That's when you say, I would like to counter that I'm worth a 3% raise, and here's why. And one of the reasons why is that list of all the suggestions that you've made that prove that you're engaged as an employee and that you're not just a clock puncher who comes in, does the job, and goes home. You're trying to make the job a better place, a safer place, safer for the employees, safer for the staff, maybe save money here and there on different things, whatever those suggestions are. But I recommend that you guys keep track of the suggestions you make like that, because when it comes time for that review, depending on your boss, they may be like I had 120 staff at one point. I had to do 120 reviews within like a 1 month period. There comes a point when you start to try to rush through these things and get them done. I may not be able to stop and think, now, what did Joe Bob do that was really exemplary over the past year? That's a long time. So that's something for you guys to remember, is write down these things that you do so that you can recall them when it's time to champion yourself during the annual evaluations.
But I think it's almost a disservice to an employee like myself for the fact that they come out and say, this is what the raise is going to be. Everybody's getting this raise. So there really is no incentive to be a good employee.
So we talked about that.
And, it's just hard because that's just,
right.
That's in my.
But you can't say that. You can't say that when you're meeting with the administrators, because you can't say, why should I work any harder than anybody else when we're all getting the same raise? Because I would hear that. I would
but
hear
it's true. I mean, that's totally
yeah, but it just
true.
makes you sound like a non-team player.
Well,
and if they're looking for a reason to pay you less, that's one of them. You're a complainer. You don't believe in giving more. You don't believe in going above.
It's not being. I mean, so I understand what you're saying. So that's my thought process, because I, as a tech, you know, I get up, I do my job, and I do it well, and I go above and beyond, and I do these different things. And seeing somebody who is a lazier tech and, you know, won't ever, if they call and say, hey, will you cover a shift? Or if I say, hey, you know what, I have something, will you cover a shift for me? You know, because I always cover a shift for you, and they don't ever do it. To know that that person's getting the same raise that I'm getting is disheartening. And, you know, I see as a administrator that they see you as a whiner, but I also think it's how you present that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. It's probably not worth presenting that at all. I mean, when I went to my boss this last time, I didn't present anything of like, everybody got this raise and I'm a better employee. No, I presented it as, you know, these are the things that I do, and this is where I feel like I'm a valuable employee. Is there anything we can do? Because, you know, and this is where the new employees are coming in, and this is where I'm at, and I've been a tech for 12 years. You know, I'm like, so I'm kind of looking at her saying, am I valued enough for you to do something about it? And hard thing is I know she values me, and I know she would love to do something about it. I just don't know that it's her choice.
Exactly.
But am I worth keeping? Because if it comes back and they're not willing to work, they're not willing to do anything, I don't get any answers, then that's when they lose good employees.
Well, and the other thing,
and that's when you start looking elsewhere, because I know that the pay to start out somewhere else is going to be $26, because I know my company's trying to get up to par with everybody else. So that means that I can go somewhere else, and I'm going to start at that. And then I'm going to look at them and go, well, I have 12 years experience. Where does that get me? And I guarantee that they will offer me more possibly than what I'm making now. But I just have to go out and find, I love my job. I like where I'm at. I love what I do, which is why I go above and beyond, because I actually enjoy what I do. And when I see flaws or I see things that can be messed up, I like to try to fix those, because I also don't want to mess those up. You know, when I find little things that, like, hey, this was almost a repeat of the same exam, because we changed it to a bilateral, and this is still floating out here and the patient didn't understand. So this was done yesterday and now I almost did it again today. Like, we need to get those deleted. And, you know, because then again, that's, you know, I'm not doing best practice, and I'm not doing, you know, what I've been licensed to do. I'm not giving the patient a LARA or all of those things. So,
so if you're online, make a comment.
Who knows if I'll be valued somewhere else? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
make a comment so we know you're on there. Give us a thumbs up.
The grass isn't always greener, but sometimes it could be.
So one thing that we talked about yesterday was that you should have 2 raises, and if your company stops doing 2 raises, that's a bad sign. You should have a merit raise because a merit raise just is attached to how well you're doing as an employee.
Ours does not do that anymore.
And then there's a cost of living increase. And the cost of living increase is meant just to keep up with inflation. And if you think about right now, we're in this like 9% inflation, and the company says we're giving you a 3% raise, and they're bragging about it, you're going backwards 6%. And if you're only getting that raise and not the merit raise on top of it, you're also going backwards, whatever that amount would be. So one thing to check, you know, people that are interviewing for jobs, I get the question of how do we find the best company? You're on camera. I don't know what you're doing. Why don't you just call the phone from somebody else's phone and find it and be done?
Because I wasn't there. We have to go.
Well, we asked you that before we got on camera, and you wouldn't give us an answer.
All right, time to take cheerleaders to the game.
All right, go have fun. So I wanted to share that with you guys, because that's common stuff, right? That's a common occurrence. That's an example of an employee who's engaged, who is doing her best by her patients. She's making suggestions to make the workplace better, and she's getting decent raises. Don't get me wrong. But nobody ever trains us as technologists when we're students or when we're techs. Nobody ever trains us about the mindset to keep track of what you're doing that's beneficial to the company. Um, it would be nice if the bosses did that, but and not to make excuses for the boss, but if we've got 120 staff that we're bossing, it's really hard for me to keep track of what they're all doing all the time, right? So that's why I told her you should email yourself, and there's caveats there, because if she emails herself to the company email, and this is also something that I teach people to do whenever something um, uncomfortable happens, you have a confrontation with a patient or another employee or something like that. It's in here. You hear it? Hang on. I have no idea where that is. Over there. Okay. All right. The joys of trying to do a live video with a house full of people, right? Thank you to the 5 of you that are on. I appreciate that. I appreciate the thumbs up that you've given. Post any comments or questions in the comments section so we can address them, because that's part of why we do this. We bring up a topic, we talk about it, it triggers thoughts in you guys. I can help solve questions, answer questions, that kind of stuff. But the whole point of this was just that, first of all, when you have students, they question you, be comfortable with that. Be comfortable. If they ask you something and you clench up because you don't know the answer, relax. We can't be expected to know everything. Think about all the stuff you learned in the 2 years that you went to x-ray school. Some of that gets brain dumped the minute you pass the board exams. You can't, I had a radiologist once tell me he had a medical professor in medical school that actually explained it to him this way. He said, our brain is like an iceberg. And every time we have to learn something new, that new thing is a penguin that's trying to get on that iceberg. And there's only so much room on the iceberg for these penguins. So at some point, when a new penguin comes along, you got to kick off an old penguin to have room for the new one. You just can't remember everything. And now that we have phones and all this kind of stuff where we can make notes, it's really helpful. I have Color Note is the name of the app, and it's just a quick YC-WIG. You just go on there and you can speak it or you can type it in, and then I review my notes at the end of the day. But I don't know the answer. Say you don't know the answer. In fact, she said they looked it up. They looked up the answer together. It was do you do an angle on a standing lateral or L5S1 spot view? And so that's why I like having students around, because they refresh my memory. They ask me questions. We get so used to doing things in a certain way. How many times have you heard that? Why do you do it that way? Because that's just how we've always done it, right? That's a horrible answer. And as techs, we get pushed to go faster, do more exams, do more exams. Why is your turnaround time taking so long? The ER's calling. Where's that patient? Where's that study? Always take the time that you need to do the exam, because ultimately you owe it to the patient to give proper patient care, and you owe it to the patient to give the best image possible that goes to the radiologist. So I would almost say you owe the radiologist, but really he's just doing his job reading it. What you owe is proper patient care to the patient. That's your customer. We just call them patients. So always if you're getting pushed to go faster and faster, that's a whole nother conversation. But you need to learn how to stand up for yourself and say, I'm concerned about patient safety. We're being asked to go so fast that I'm concerned about our patient safety and about making mistakes. And I certainly wouldn't want that to happen. Would you, boss? No. So learn how to slow down, do the job right. But this conversation that I had with my wife today was just spurred so many thoughts that I actually asked like 3 times, would you mind doing a video with me? Would you mind doing a video with me? She doesn't really like getting on, but it brought up how we always have to welcome the questions from the students and we learn together. It brought up how you think it through. And if you think of a better way to do it, make that suggestion to your boss. Here's a better way, but always be looking for ways to improve the process. And that is what makes you a valuable employee as opposed to other employees that don't do those kinds of things. And the final thought was capture what you did in an email to yourself. And I don't think I got this out when I was trying to say it a minute ago. If you're emailing yourself on your company email, there's a chance that that could be disrupted. If you lose your job, you no longer have access to that company email. So when I teach people that if something uncomfortable happens and you're making a note to yourself, consider sending it to your personal email, as long as there's no company information, patient information, that kind of thing. You're allowed to email yourself and say, today I had a drunk patient in the ER yell at me and they swore at me and they took a swing at me. And so I said, you know what, I'm not going to examine this patient. I fear my personal well-being is in danger. And go back, send yourself an email and report as much as you can to help you remember, and then be done and move on and keep that record for yourself. Same thing applies here. Keep a record that you did something to show that you're an engaged employee, that you're trying to help out. And so later, when you go to tell the boss why you deserve that 3% raise instead of a 1% raise, you've got this list of things you've done. Ralph, I believe when you have students, you need to train them not just in position, but what directors want to know and what equipment they use and the psychology of patient care during an exam. Yeah, agreed. Take your time, but don't get stuck in one gear. That's how you grow and gain confidence. Yep. In Zen, we call it having a Belgian era mind. Keep yourself fresh when students ask questions. Beginner's mind. Yeah. Yeah, I know. So you need to train them in not just the position, what the directors want to know and what equipment they use and the psychology of patient care. Yeah, that's a lot you packaged a lot in that one, but um, as a clinical instructor or the mentor, the employee who's teaching the student, um, it is your job to teach best practice, but it really should come through in your day-to-day work habits. You shouldn't have to stop and think about how to train that student per se. They should just be observing you in your natural environment, if that makes sense. So, if we're doing this standing L spine, I'm just going to do the standing L spine and I'm going to talk to the patient. I'm going to, if we're starting from the beginning, I'm going to check the order, make sure it's accurate, let them, they'll watch me do that. Then I'm going to go get the patient with them watching, and I'm going to verify 3 forms of identification, take them back, get them changed if necessary, position them, explain what I'm doing, finish it up, take them back to the changing room, wait for them, take them back out to the lobby, whatever. The student observes that whole process, and if necessary, ask questions. And if you're the type of person that talks through what you're doing to the student, I kind of enjoy that when I'm learning different things, depending on what it is. If I'm observing somebody, I like to hear what they're thinking when they're doing different things. Because I can see that you're raising a bucky up and down, or that you're putting the plate in sideways or landscape or whatever. I can see that. But if I can hear what your thought process is, I'm going to do the AP first because they're already facing me. And so I'm going to put it in portrait, and then I'm going to push the button. And then since I've already got them this way, I'm going to do this and that. And, explaining the process helps a lot. But for the most part, the student should be able to just observe you. And if you're not comfortable with that, maybe that speaks to you needing a little additional training as well. And there is a little bit of that in all of us, probably, because we don't see every exam every day. You don't do you don't do SI joints every day, or mandibles or something, and you get one and there's a student watching and you're like, crap, I don't remember how to do these. That's okay. Look it up, take that opportunity, ask the student. So what do you remember about doing mandibles? Tell me how you would do it. And then if you need to look it up, if you're not sure, maybe they jog the memory and you're like, oh, that's right. You do the obliques, at an angle and whatnot. But if not, that's what protocol books are for. And that's why every department should have a protocol book. Um, so I hope this has been helpful. It's been about 35 minutes. That's a decent time to cut it off. I just like, when my wife comes home or when we're out at dinner or whenever we're doing something and we have these discussions, it's often interesting because her view from the tech side versus my view from the administrative side, you can kind of see things from different angles that way, and I like to share that with you guys when I can, because as a tech you don't see the administrative side, and you never will unless you get that job. You just don't know what happens on that side of the desk unless you are on that side of the desk. It's like it's real easy. It used to be frustrating for me as a director because it's real easy for techs to get so upset and say, you know, you knew Bob was gonna quit. He put in a 2 week notice, and here we are 2 months later. Bob's been gone, and you haven't hired anybody to replace him yet. Valid concern, right? You've probably thought that yourself, but what you don't know is what's happening on the back end. And I actually did a presentation on that once. I actually made a PowerPoint presentation to my entire staff one time, and I said, let me discuss this with you so that you fully understand this process. Because what really goes on in the background, if I can summarize real quick, is if somebody puts in a notice to a director that they're quitting, you then have to turn in paperwork to your boss to request a replacement. And oftentimes you have to justify it. You can't just say, Bob's leaving, give me another one. You have to justify with numbers. Bob does X amount of work. We have X amount in the department. If I don't replace Bob, that puts X amount of work on these other employees, which rises them above a certain threshold, which is unsafe for patient safety, or however you have to do it. But you have to justify replacing that person. It's not an automatic thing. So then it goes to the boss, and the boss is reading your thing. Oh, he's justifying why and why. But then that boss has a boss, and maybe that big boss told your boss, look, we're tight right now. You can't hire anybody for 3 months. So it doesn't matter what my paperwork said or how justified it was. If my boss tells me no, there's nothing I can do about it. But let's just say they go along with it and they rubber stamp it. Yes, you can have a replacement. Then it goes to HR. And then HR has to build up a file. They have to put out advertising on Indeed or the company website or wherever you're putting out the job ads. And you got to give it 2 to 3 weeks, a month, right, out there in the interwebs to get attention and to receive resumes. So you're stacking them up, hopefully. And then after you get some, it's been 3 or 4 weeks, then you say, okay, we've gotten 10 applications to replace Bob. Let's start scheduling interviews. Well, then you got to call all these people, get these interviews scheduled. But it's not just calling the people applying, it's saying, okay, how many interviews are they going to have? Because an x-ray tech, for example, could get interviewed by me, the radiology director, just a one-on-one, could get interviewed by the x-ray supervisor and maybe some x-ray techs because you want your team to meet them as well. I could be joined by other directors of other departments, because oftentimes when we interview people, depending on the level of the employee, but sometimes you have direct, like I could have the ER guy, a transporter manager, and me, because my employee can affect those departments equally as well. So now you're not just scheduling this person for their interview, you're trying to get the schedules for all these people to match up so that they can meet with this one person. So once you get all these schedules to match up, you get all these interviews scheduled and everybody at them, then you got to have them. And then you got to sit there and you got to ask the questions and you got to tally up scores and all, like this person had this problem, whatever. And once you get through all the interviews, then you make some choices and you hand that back to HR and say, these are my top 3 picks out of those 10 candidates. Then HR has to do the background checks, which could take a couple weeks, drug screens, which could take a couple weeks. And then once they get through all that and they call previous employers and they make sure nobody's a wanted killer or whatever, you basically get the green light. Okay, we're going to hire that person. Then you have to set up new hire orientation, which usually is only once or twice a month at your hospital. So then you got to wait 2 weeks till the next new hire orientation comes along, and you schedule them in there, and then you can schedule them for their first shift after that, right? So there's this big long path of hiring a new person that staff doesn't know, because staff doesn't have to deal with it. They just see Bob quit, where's his replacement? So when we see these types of things, that's why I like to discuss them with you guys, to try to give you that background so that you have a better understanding of how it's all working, the things that you don't see as a tech, as a technologist. So I don't see any other questions. I do see there's some of you logged in. If you have any other questions, let me know. But that was the discussion today. Be open to the students, help them out the best you can. Be willing to look up protocols, and then if you ever see something that can be done better, be willing to share that with your administrator. Try to make it a better place, and then take note of to yourself that you made a suggestion, so that when it's time for your annual evaluation, you have something to show that makes you stand out above everybody else. Turn that off. And I hope this has been helpful. If you haven't hit the like button already, please do so. Hit the bell so you can see when I do these. I try, like today, I went on the Facebook group real quick and said, I'm going to go live. And I gave the link, and maybe that gave some of you a heads up, but I don't always get that opportunity. Oftentimes I just get an empty house to myself. So I go, I'm going to hop on real quick and share some knowledge. But I like that this will stay on YouTube now. I'll try to link some show notes to say what the topics were, and then future people looking for these answers can find them. Don't forget to visit the blog, theradiologictechnologist.com. And of course, this YouTube channel is, I believe we're over 200 videos on here. There's pushing 250, 275 articles on the blog. And I'm working on a book now. If you hadn't heard, you can go to the blog and check it out. It's going to have a whole bunch of tips and tricks and advice and mentoring things for everybody. It's for people trying to get into school and how to do that. It's for people in school trying to get through it, how to get through school. It's for people starting out their career. How do I get the best job, get the most money, get the best pay? And it's finally for the technologists in the field, how to advance in the career, get multimodality training, keep your head under the radar when it comes to stuff flying around at work, and then some bonus stuff in the back about burnout and how to find a side hustle and keep your mind clear and enjoy this career. So thanks again for joining me. I'll see you guys next time. It's usually right now when I go to click the button that somebody says something. It's usually Mr. Allen, and he's not on today. Okay, cool.